Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we really roll up our sleeves, take the source material you bring us, maybe articles, research, even personal notes like today, and just, plunge right in.
Yeah, the idea is to really dig deep and pull out the most valuable bits, the core knowledge and insights.
Exactly. We're here to sort of guide you through it, help navigate sometimes complex ideas, so you walk away feeling, well, genuinely informed, maybe even surprised by a few things.
Hopefully.
And today, wow, we have a really fascinating stack of notes here. We're doing a deep dive into a very specific set of teachings. We're focusing squarely on this author's unique perspective on spiritualism, what it means to be human at a fundamental level, and how they describe this connection, this intricate link between our physical world and what they call the spirit world.
It's definitely a distinct viewpoint. It challenges some common ideas quite profoundly.
It really does.
And just to be clear up front, the sources you've given us, they look like notes and excerpts, right? And they strongly suggest they come from a book, probably called The Bridge Between Two Worlds. Right.
So that's our foundation. This material, these specific ideas, that's what we're exploring today. We're not bringing in outside commentary, just unpacking what's right here in these pages you provided.
Got it. Sticking to the source.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our mission, really, for this deep dive is, well, specific. We want to meticulously unpack the teachings laid out right here in your notes.
Okay.
Understand how they connect, like how the author's view of human nature links to their view of the spirit world, how they suggest you grow spiritually, and importantly, the practical guidance offered for actually connecting with that invisible realm.
Practical guidance. Okay.
Yeah. We're aiming to shine a light on every significant piece of information presented here, tailoring this whole exploration for you, the listener, since you brought this fascinating material to us wanting to get a really full understanding.
It's definitely a topic that grabs you, doesn't it? I mean, conscious life after death, connecting with beings we can't see.
And a clear path for personal growth tied into all that. It makes you question some really fundamental things about, well, everything.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Where do we start? Maybe with the basic landscape the author describes, their idea of the two worlds and how we fit in.
Sounds like the perfect place to start. So the author grounds their perspective, partly building on an idea that might be familiar from Marie Corelli's book, The Romance of Two Worlds. They use that term, two worlds.
Right.
But they immediately clarify their definition. It's not the usual Earth versus some distant heaven or hell, not that simple separation.
Okay, so what is it then?
Well, they describe these two worlds as being much closer, almost, interwoven. The first world, the one we're consciously in right now, that's the sublunar Earth plane.
Sublunar Earth plane. Got it.
And they're explicit. This is the lowest stratum of the spirit world connected to Earth. The other world, or perhaps better put, the other spheres, are the spheres beyond.
Beyond this lowest stratum.
Exactly. That's where the so-called dead, those who've left their physical bodies, actually live, think, and act. And the book itself, the source of these notes, is presented as the bridge connecting this lowest level, where we are now, with those higher, finer spheres.
Huh. So it's less about location, more about levels.
Yeah.
Like different densities of reality. And physical life is just the ground floor of Earth's spirit world.
That's a good way to put it. It definitely shifts the perspective from the get-go. We're already in the spirit world, just the lowest part of it.
Okay, that does change things. So given that framework, how does the author describe us? What are we as beings living in this lowest stratum?
They give a very clear structure for that. Human nature is described as complex, a tripartite composition.
Tripartite, meaning three parts.
Yes, exactly. And they're
Yeah.
very specific about the terms. The soul, the spirit body, which they also call the psychic or ethereal body, and then the physical body or fleshly body.
Soul, spirit body, physical body.
Right. They do mention that other terms exist, like the European way, spirit, perispirit, body, but they prefer their terms for clarity within their teachings.
Makes sense. So let's break those down. The soul, what's the author's take on that?
The soul is presented as, well, the absolute core, the fundamental part. It's the real self, the true ego within.
The real you.
The real you. And while we're in this physical body, the soul is kind of veiled by it, its origin, traced right back to the divine, and offspring of the infinite soul, the all-life.
Offspring of the infinite.
Yeah, and because it comes from this infinite source, the soul itself is enduring, eternal, just like its source.
Okay, eternal and divine in origin. What else?
A really key aspect, according to these notes, is that the soul possesses intuitive knowledge,
Intuitive knowledge, meaning,
meaning it knows certain fundamental truths inherently without needing to learn them through physical observation or experience. Like the source gives examples. The soul just knows time and space are infinite. It instinctively refers things back to a source, to the infinite.
so it comes preloaded with some deep truths.
Kind of, yeah. And that's contrasted with the knowledge we gain through our senses, through observation, through living life here. That's a different category of knowing altogether.
Got it. So the soul is the eternal core, the true identity, with this built-in cosmic awareness, but it's veiled by the physical. How does the spirit body fit into this picture? You said it was the second element.
That's right. The spirit body is the second element. It's described as permeating the physical body. It's like the vehicle or the medium through which the soul interacts with and animates the physical form. It enables its functions.
So it connects the soul to the physical.
Exactly. And the author is careful here. They specify this spirit body is not supernatural. It follows natural laws, just, laws of a finer, less dense reality than the physical ones we usually deal with.
Finer natural laws.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the sources mention clairvoyance, people with that kind of spiritual sight. They can apparently perceive this spirit body.
They can see it.
They can see the spirit body, yes. But even they, according to the author, can't directly see the soul itself while it's embodied. Now, other spirits, those who've already passed on, they do see the spirit body of people still living. And they learn about the soul through how it manifests in that spirit body, how it expresses itself, how it operates. So the spirit body acts as a sort of intermediary, a bridge even between the soul and the outer world, both physical and spiritual.
Okay, so the spirit body sounds crucial for both functioning now and potentially interacting later.
Yeah.
What about the physical body then? What's its role in this three-part system?
The physical body, in this view, is really just a temporary habitation.
Temporary.
Yeah, an outward form, or, quite pointedly, a perished envelope. The idea is it's not the essential part of us, not permanent.
Just shell.
Pretty much. When physical death happens, the spirit body, carrying the soul inside, simply passes out of this physical form. And that transition is described as moving into a finer, freer mode of existence.
Finer and freer.
Exactly. The author uses a really striking analogy. It's like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis.
Ah, I like that.
Right. The butterfly doesn't miss being a worm, doesn't pine for it. It suggests shedding the physical body is natural, intended, and ultimately a liberation, not a loss to be feared.
That definitely reframes death.
Mm.
Okay, so if we have this eternal soul, this spirit body, and this temporary physical form, and we're currently in the lowest sphere of a bigger spirit world, what's the point? What's the ultimate purpose of being embodied like this, according to the author?
That question really hits the core of the teachings here. The central aim, the purpose of our existence as laid out in these sources, is to approximate the source whence we came.
Approximate the source. Get closer to God, basically.
Essentially, yes. And the way to do that is twofold. First, by perfecting our personal character, and second, by loving all other sons and daughters of the same source.
Perfecting character and loving others.
That's the path. This becomes the goal as our spiritual nature develops, as we sort of nurture and unfold this inherent germ of infinite beauty, truth, and goodness that was apparently put inside us when we were first individualized from that infinite soul. It's about realizing our own divine potential.
So the purpose is internal growth, refining ourselves, expanding our love, not about achieving some external thing.
Exactly. It's fundamentally internal, and that ties directly into the idea of eternal progression, right? This isn't just a one-lifetime project.
Right, continues.
Absolutely. The sources stress that the soul's basic nature doesn't change. What happens is it unfolds towards that perfection that inheres in its conscious individualization. You're becoming more fully what you already are, deep down.
Unfolding towards perfection.
Yeah. The author mentions Plato's idea, from God it comes, and to God it will eventually return, as similar, but they add a really crucial point. This journey preserves your everlasting personality and individuality.
So you don't just dissolve back into the source. You stay you.
You stay you. You progress as a distinct, conscious individual, retaining that identity forever. That's a key distinction they make.
That is significant. And this progression definitely continues after physical death, right?
Right.
The sources mention advanced spirits.
They do. They talk about figures like, well, Jesus and Shakespeare, describing them as having hied on to fresh fields and pastures new. Their influence, their starry light, is now poured out from a higher level.
So there's a hierarchy, different levels of advancement.
It certainly implies a dynamic spiritual hierarchy, yeah. Beings at all different stages on this path of eternal unfolding. It's not a static afterlife, it's constant growth.
Okay, now here's where it gets, like, really mind-bending for me, connecting back to the two worlds idea. The author says, quite strongly, that all spirits, whether embodied here like us or discarnate over there, are inevitably linked together by indissoluble bonds.
It's indissoluble bonds. Wow.
And it's not just a nice thought. It's presented as a fundamental reality, based on the universal brotherhood of souls and the universal parentage of God.
Yeah.
We're all connected.
That concept of universal linkage is incredibly powerful, isn't it? And the sources give a concrete example of how real it is.
Oh, yeah.
High souls, those who are way ahead of us in the spiritual spheres, they are genuinely glad, apparently, when mortals like us try to be good, choose the higher path. They're described as literally rejoicing over one sinner that repenteth.
Wow. So it's not just a parable. They mean it literally. Our efforts here bring joy there.
That's exactly how it's presented, a direct consequence of this spiritual interconnectedness. They feel our struggles, they feel our triumphs.
Okay, let's just pause on that for a moment. Think about the weight that gives to, like, small choices we make every day. It's not just about my virtue. The author is saying every time we choose kindness or self-control, it sends a positive ripple, a wave of joy through the higher realms.
That's the implication, a constant active interest from advanced spirits in
Right.
what we're doing
It's
down here.
huge.
And then there's the flip side, the heavy implication of the opposite.
Oh, right, if the good affects them.
The bad does too. The author states that every degradation, every time we turn away from that higher calling, wallow in sensuality or lower desires, it affects the whole spiritual world as well.
The whole spiritual.
Whole spiritual world. And the most advanced spirits, being more sensitive, they sense this negative stuff most keenly. It just hammers home the significance of our individual choices. They echo way beyond just us. Your personal struggle isn't just personal, it's part of this universal dynamic.
Goodness, that really drives home that no man is an island idea. Our actions here literally impact the state of the entire spiritual reality, including those who progress way beyond us. It definitely elevates personal responsibility.
Immensely.
So, okay, if soul growth and progression are the aim, and our actions have this big ripple effect because we're all connected, how do we do it? How do we practically achieve this growth? What are the methods the author teaches for this soul culture, as they call it?
Right, the practical side. The core principle is stated very clearly. Soul culture, or true character building, is the specific object of the book. It's meant to provide methods and suggestions.
Methods and suggestions, okay.
But, and this is crucial, the author's absolutely clear, others may aid. They can counsel, suggest, maybe influence positively. But the work itself, that must be done by our individual self. We are mainly responsible to ourselves.
You can't outsource soul growth.
Nope. It's an active, personal effort, no shortcuts.
Okay, so it's internal work. And part of that work is about removing all hindrances to the onward growth of our soul.
The sources list specific hindrances, right? Very practical things.
Very practical. They identify several specific internal barriers, and for each suggest a transformation.
Okay, what are they?
First, all fleshly appetites, meaning actively work to conquer them. Not just ignore them, but overcome the pull of lower physical desires.
Conquer appetites. Got it.
Then, hate. That has to be consciously substituted with kindness. An active replacement.
Kindness instead of hate. Makes sense. Pride is next. A major block. Requires substitution with humility.
Pride to humility. Okay.
Then self-will. Insisting on your own way. That needs to be replaced by self-effacement. A willingness to yield sometimes for the greater good.
Self-will to self-effacement. Tricky one.
Can be. And finally, anxiety. Constant worry. That needs substituting with trust. Trust in the process, in higher guidance, in the universe itself.
Anxiety to trust. These are definitely big internal battles we all face.
Absolutely. They're not abstract sins. They're specific traits and states the author sees as actively blocking the soul's growth.
So how do we work on these? The author goes into detail about the mental steps for preparing yourself, right? Not just for specific spiritual stuff, but for daily life, work, even public speaking.
Yes, this mental preparation is presented as absolutely foundational. It's stressed as being more prominent than the material, the physical steps, and needs to be comprehended and accepted first. Mindset is key.
Okay, so what's the mental prep process?
It starts with withdrawal, or entering the inner closet. Basically, consciously stepping away from the noise and demands of the outside world, finding quiet, darkness, seclusion to go within.
Step 1, withdraw.
Step 2, laying aside cares and annoyances. This is tough. It requires achieving absolute indifference to every care, no matter how engrossing.
Absolute indifference.
Yeah. The author shares a personal note here, saying that because of prior nervous tension, they initially had to use all the strength of my will just to keep their body still. But this process of actively letting go of pairs brought huge relief. It's a real mental discipline.
Okay, withdraw, then lay aside cares. What's next?
Next is excluding unkind feelings. And this means entirely excluding all anger, all bitterness, all indignation, even if you feel totally justified.
Even if justified, that's hard.
Very. There's a powerful anecdote about a woman stuck because she couldn't let go of bitterness towards her father. The author told her she couldn't even take the first step of laying aside cares until she could release that bitterness, even just for this one little minute. It shows how vital clearing negative emotion is.
That really illustrates it. Okay, so withdraw, lay aside cares, exclude unkind feelings. Then
Comes communing with one's own heart. Turning inward, looking at your own mind, learning to distinguish the mind itself from the thoughts and feelings passing through it. The author quotes David, "Commune with your own heart and be still."
self-reflection.
Deep self-reflection, and this is said to lead to a profound insight, the knowledge that life is forevermore.
Interesting. And the final mental step.
The final step is connecting with universal forces, or infinite intelligence. Once the inner space is cleared, you consciously think of the power and life of the universe. You try to become aware of our share in that life, our oneness with the infinite life. This requires aspiration, the author says, a conscious reaching up, a desire to connect.
Withdraw, let go, clear negativity, self-reflect, connect. That's quite a sequence. And this mental state is crucial before any physical steps.
Absolutely crucial. The author warns strongly against just doing the physical actions without the inner work. Developing magnetism physically without soul development is a rock that has wrecked many mediums. The inner state has to come first.
Right. The inner state gives meaning to the outer actions. So what are the physical steps outlined?
There are 4 main physical steps described meant to complement the inner state.
Okay, step 1.
Step 1 is just getting into the starting position, facing north. The notes don't detail why north or how you first align, but it's the starting point.
Facing north.
Step 2 is the posture for receiving. From facing north, you turn left to face south. Lift your hands, lift your eyes, and mentally you focus on receiving aid, light from higher sources, advanced spirits, universal forces.
Turn south. Hands and eyes up, ready to receive.
Exactly. But the author notes a pitfall. The mind can easily wander back to earthly worries here. You have to stay focused on receiving.
Okay. Step 3.
Step 3 is invoking. From facing south, you turn clear around once to the right. This brings you back facing north again. Keep the hands and eyes uplifted, and during this step, you make your invocation.
An invocation. Like a prayer or request.
It seems so. The exact words aren't given, but it implies consciously asking high intelligences for help or connection. This position, back facing north after the turn, is said to be when spirits can reach us most easily because we're now magnetized and aligned from the previous steps.
North to start, south to receive, back to north to invoke. What's the last step?
The 4th step is wrapping. Still standing after facing north, you then turn round and round 3 or 4 times to the right. There are brief mentions of physical motions, like passing fingers of the left hand over the right arm. It's an encircling movement.
Wrapping yourself.
Energetically. Exactly. The purpose is to wrap ourselves up in our own magnetic sphere. And the author makes a big claim here. This makes you perfectly secure from untoward, disembodied influence. Nothing uncongenial can penetrate it. It's energetic protection.
Mental prep, north, south, receive, north, invoke, then spin right to wrap and protect. That's very specific. What's the deal with this magnetism they keep mentioning? It doesn't sound like fridge magnets.
No, definitely not. The author presents a kind of holistic view of forces. Motion, magnetism, heat, light. They're seen as fundamentally the same thing, just different manifestations, atomic in nature.
Like,
And then comes a big statement. The soul is back of the ultimate atom. This is presented as the modern spiritual science view of God, not denying God, but seeing the divine as the underlying reality of all energy and matter.
soul behind the atom. Wow.
Within that view, these magnetic currents are the actual medium spirits used to reach mortals. They're part of the universal forces flowing from the infinite soul. And here's the key. Direct spirit communication is impossible if a mortal isn't in harmonious vibration with the earth sphere's currents.
So the steps are about getting in tune. Harmonizing your vibration.
Precisely. The mental prep quiets the noise. the physical steps align you directionally. It's all about bringing your own energy into harmony with these universal currents so connection can happen.
That kind of puts a quasi-scientific spin on it. Vibration, currents, harmony. It explains why just wanting to connect isn't enough. You need the right conditions.
Exactly. And the author shares some pretty compelling personal stories about the practical benefits they got from doing this magnetic process regularly.
Oh, yeah? Like what?
Well, one big one was curing insomnia. They described suffering badly painful shocks, couldn't sleep, tried drugs like valerian, chloral, nothing worked.
Been there with insomnia, minus the shocks, maybe.
Right. But they state that doing this magnetic process before bed harmonized their body and soul, allowed them to sleep soundly, and enabled them to receive help from spirit friends while asleep.
Help while asleep. Interesting. What else?
The other anecdote is about obesity. The author talks about struggling with excess weight, especially distressing given their height. They claim that consistently practicing this process rejuvenated their whole system, brought it into harmony, and their weight naturally went back down to what it was years earlier.
Wow.
They even quote Hamlet, "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt," seeing their method as a normal way to achieve that, benefiting you in every way.
Those are powerful claims, curing insomnia and reducing obesity through a spiritual magnetic practice. It really underlines the holistic effect they're talking about.
It does, and they stress, again, that the physical movements only work if they're sincere.
Right. No, just going through the motions.
Absolutely not. The physical steps are only effective if they express the inner wish of the soul, or at least the desire to reach those mental states. Just copying gestures without the feeling, that's like an actor playing a part. No sincerity, no power. The inner state activates the outer form.
Makes sense. And there are other practical tips too, right? Based on this energy idea.
Yeah.
Positive and negative sides of the body.
Yes, briefly mentioned. The body has positive and negative energy sides. They suggest using the positive hand, probably the dominant one, to energetically strengthen others, like the elderly or sick.
Transferring energy.
Seems to be the idea. And conversely, the negative side is seen as more prone to illness, maybe more receptive to draining influences. They even give sleeping advice based on this.
Sleeping advice?
Yeah, sleep alone if you can. If you share a bed, swap sides every couple of weeks. The theory is one person's positive side might drain the other's negative side over time, causing energy loss.
Huh. Bioenergetics in the bedroom. Interesting. And this ties into broader health advice too.
Definitely. Physical health and soul development are seen as totally linked. Healthy habits create bodily harmony, which helps spiritual growth and connection.
Like diet.
Diets mentioned. They critique flesh food meat, suggesting it links to a combative nature. They prefer a simple diet and predict a future age where no meat is eaten.
And ventilation.
Huge emphasis on ventilation, constant fresh air. They blame colds and headaches on poor ventilation, even tell a story about a family getting sick until a window broke, letting fresh air in. They criticize stuffy seances and prayer meetings, too.
Fresh air is key.
What else? Exercise outdoors or well-ventilated rooms. Temperature, avoid too much artificial heat, build resilience to cold, clothing shouldn't restrict, and personal cleanliness is vital.
Basic healthy living, really.
Pretty much. But they make a specific claim. These habits, pure air, exercise, sleep, avoiding stimulants like tobacco, alcohol, significantly reduce sexual craving.
Reduce craving.
Partly through physical harmony, but also, they say, aided by spirits influencing the sensitive brain to help keep the body pure. They quote Socrates about the impure soul leaving the body stained by desires. Physical purity supports spiritual readiness.
So a clean, healthy, harmonious body isn't just good for you physically. It actually helps your soul grow and connect spiritually. It's all one system.
That's the core idea. Profoundly holistic.
Okay, moving beyond the individual practice,
Right.
What does the author say about the bigger picture, the religious landscape, the nature of spirit communication itself?
Right. This is where they position their views historically. They make a very bold claim about the foundation of all religions.
All of them?
All of them. They state flat out that each of those religions, in its beginning, rested on the fact that its founders had some special way of receiving communications from the spirit world.
Wow.
And then they say, that foundational fact is spiritualism. Their argument is that for ordinary people to found lasting religions, they needed proof, credentials. And those credentials were basically spirit communication. Modern spiritualism, then, is just this fundamental process reemerging based on direct communication happening now.
And they contrast this true religion sharply with dogma and theology.
Extremely sharply, almost confrontationally. They point to James's definition of pure religion, visiting the afflicted, staying unspotted from the world, and say that aligns perfectly with Jesus' Sermon on the Mount and parables. But they declare this is very different from theology. Theology, especially Pauline and Calvinistic kinds, gets called a shameless prostitution of Jesus' original teachings with a rotten core.
Shameless prostitution. That's incredibly strong language. What are the specific criticisms leveled against traditional Christian or Jewish theology in these notes?
They go right for the core doctrines. It's a fundamental challenge.
Like what?
First, the concept of God. They completely reject the depiction found in some theology God as a jealous, selfish, passionate tyrant, an eternal jailer. Especially the idea this God needs bloody sacrifices or even sacrificing his own son to be appeased. That's contrasted sharply with their view. God as infinite being, infinite soul, the all and in all. Simply God is life, God is love. An infinitely loving God wouldn't have those negative traits.
Okay, so the nature of God. What else?
Salvation. They really hammer the doctrine that you're saved just by believing and not by doing. They call it an immoral doctrine, arguing it leads to hypocrisy, people thinking they're fine regardless of how they act.
So works matter more than belief.
That's the stance. We are saved by doing, not by believing. Love is all sufficient. Your actual character, your aspirations, that's what counts for the next life, not just signing up to one belief system.
Okay. What about hell? Eternal damnation.
Forcefully rejected, completely unreasonable, horrific. The idea that billions who never heard of Christ are locked in hell forever, suffering, getting more wicked. They call it a horrible state, an awful universe. It contradicts their view of a loving God who made everyone to progress eternally.
So no eternal hell.
Not in this view.
Yeah.
Then there's the deity of Jesus. They question the reasonableness of Jesus being Almighty God, like how can the finite be infinite or the infinite be finite? Calling it a mystery, they argue, is just theology demanding blind belief.
They challenge that core Christian doctrine.
Directly. They even point within the New Testament, saying John's gospel reflects the later church view of Jesus as God, but James, Jesus' own brother, stuck closer to what Jesus really taught, which they argue was about works and love, not abstract deity.
Interesting distinction between the Gospels and epistles.
And finally, biblical contradictions. To argue against blind acceptance, they cite examples where the Bible seems to contradict itself, like how Judas died and who bought the field, or whether Jesus told disciples to take a staff or not.
Little details that don't quite match up.
Exactly. Presented as proof the Bible isn't all literally true or uniformly inspired. They argue it's unreasonable anyway that God's word would only go to one nation, imperfectly preserved. Reason, they insist, not books or councils, is the ultimate standard for truth.
That's a pretty thorough critique, hitting major points of traditional theology, all based on their principles of reason, love, progression, and spirit communication evidence. How do they see Jesus himself, then, within this spiritualism framework?
Jesus isn't seen as uniquely divine in the traditional sense, separate from us. He's presented as a highly advanced, exceptional spiritualist, someone remarkably accessible to spirit influences.
A master medium, almost.
You could put it that way. An instrument for spirit world forces. They partly attribute this to his background, belonging to a highly mediumistic race, mentioning Abraham, Moses, the prophets as examples in that lineage.
Okay, and his miracles.
Interpreted through this spiritualist lens. Healings, drawing on universal forces, spirit world energy, transmitted via touch, turning water to wine, multiplying bread, compared directly to modern phenomena like materialized flowers or food at seances.
So not supernatural violations of law.
No, but advanced applications of finer natural laws, laws of energy and matter, understood by advanced spirits working with or through him. It reframes the miraculous as natural, just highly advanced.
That's a consistent reinterpretation. And the author also contrasts spiritualism with other systems, like theosophy.
Oh yes, a strong critique there too. The main point of difference. Theosophy rests on theory. Spiritualism on facts. Facts from direct communication and phenomena.
Theory versus facts.
Exactly. They argue theosophy lacks proof from discarnate spirits, its ideas are unknown to older spirits, and crucially, things like reincarnation without memory. That nullifies memory, which the author sees as the only proof of identity. It undermines personal progression. The facts of spiritualism, they claim, contradict theosophy's assumptions.
Okay, so based on all this, its basis in facts, natural laws, accessibility, reason, love, progression, and its difference from flawed theology and theory, the author really champions progressive spiritualism as the future religion of the world.
They absolutely do. Passionately. They list key advantages why a universal spiritualism would be pure and unadulterated religion.
What are those advantages?
1. Its manifestations are recent and present, happening now, testable by anyone who investigates properly, not just ancient stories you take on faith.
Verifiable now.
2. Based on natural laws used by spirits, not miracles. So, harder for designing priests to control mankind, as they believe happens with dogma.
Less prone to manipulation.
3. Anyone can potentially communicate if they follow the laws. This shows the spirit world actively trying to help humanity, empowering individuals.
That's simple at all.
4. It's both philosophical as well as scientific. It demands causes for effects, leading back to infinite intelligence, satisfies reason and the need for ultimate meaning.
Reason and meaning combined.
5. Its core teaching is absolute and universal love and helpfulness without bounds and without an end, the highest ethic.
Universal love.
And finally, 6. It confirms eternal progression. Life and growth continue forever. This ennobles earthly life, makes it meaningful, and removes the fear of death.
It sounds like a very rational, empowering, hopeful system they're describing. But as you said, getting the evidence requires proper investigation.
Crucial point, they use that telegraph analogy. You need to learn the laws, be docile, unprejudiced, patient, persistent. You can't just demand facts without engaging the process.
Right, like demanding a telegraph message without learning how to use the machine.
Exactly. They contrast this with skeptics who demand proof but won't investigate properly. They quote, "Do as Columbus did, explore the unknown regions, even if others say it's impossible."
Be an explorer.
Yeah. But the evidence is there, they insist, for unprejudiced minds. Ending with that proverb, none are as blind as those who will not see. It's a challenge to you, the listener. The path is there, but you need an open, diligent mind.
The responsibility is on the investigator. Okay, we've covered the concepts, the practices, the philosophy, the critiques. Now let's connect it to the person. The sources sketch out the author's own story, Abby A. Judson. Her journey seems key to understanding why she taught this.
Her personal story is absolutely fundamental. You feel the conviction comes from her experience. She was born in Burma, 1835. Her parents, Dr. Adoniram Judson, Sarah Hall Boardman Judson, famous Baptist missionaries.
Deeply religious background.
Extremely. But her early life had lost Brother Henry. Her mother, Sarah, died. She followed the path initially, teaching, doing missionary work herself, before finding spiritualism.
And despite that outward devotion, she talks about this deep inner conflict.
Oh, absolutely. Very candidly. And inside, a gulf of uncertainty opening into a sea of despair. Outwardly conforming, inwardly, she just could not believe the core doctrines.
Especially eternal damnation.
That was the killer. The idea that most of humanity, billions who never heard of Christ or didn't accept him just so, were doomed to eternal hell. She called it a horrible state of affairs. It was so disturbing she couldn't even long for immortality herself, couldn't bear a universe where that was true for most people. She felt she was living a double life.
Outward faith, inner despair, that sounds incredibly painful. And personal experiences started breaking through this.
Exactly. Experiences she couldn't easily dismiss. One was seeing a white form of her stepmother, Emily C. Judson, in 1854, miles away right before Emily died. She tried explaining it as maybe magnetic projection while alive.
Rationalizing it away.
Right, but couldn't figure out how it could happen after death. She later saw that as incipient materialism in herself.
Okay, what else?
Communication from her dead younger brother, George, a feeble boy, started as tiny raps, then gentle and clear raps, came through to his mother and to Abby herself. Persistent communication from a loved one. That provided undeniable data.
Data points chipping away the doubt. But the big one, the real turning point, was her father, Adoniram Judson.
Yes, that was pivotal. Communication via loud, firm, strongly individual tips of the table. And crucially, the table tipped away from her, ruling out her unconscious action.
Objective evidence for her.
That experience with her father, plus George's messages, finally convinced her. Convinced her the so-called dead are not dead, they can return, and the big one, those who do not accept Christ are not shut up in hell. That direct knowledge from her own family was immense relief. Freedom from that despair.
That moment of certainty must have changed everything, finally resolving that awful double life. And she received other messages too.
Yes, the notes mention others from her father. Onward. The world is your field. Joy is the greatest blessing. And importantly, reason must balance the manifestations. Critical thinking was encouraged. Also things like soul to soul, like the blending of light. And from her mother, Sarah, I come to my love. Look to the world at large, my dear daughter. Encouragement and love.
So these personal, factual communications from her own family, they were the bedrock, the facts that built her belief and fueled her teachings in the bridge between two worlds.
Absolutely. They allowed her to move from doubt and despair to certainty and peace. And this transformation wasn't just belief, right? It had practical effects, like public speaking.
Right. She mentions finding the idea quite absurd initially, especially being over 50, couldn't face an audience. But by persistently using her own mental prep methods, throwing off care, withdrawing inward, she learned to speak with ease and pleasure.
So she lived her teachings, used the methods herself to overcome a real limitation.
That really grounds it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, we've looked at the foundations, the path, the philosophy, the personal journey. Let's try to synthesize this. What's the big picture takeaway from this deep dive into Abby Judson's teachings?
Well, bringing it all together from your sources, the core message seems to be about an interconnected universe designed for conscious, eternal growth.
Interconnected and progressive.
Exactly. Two worlds, but linked. We're eternal souls in temporary bodies, physical and spirit ones. Our whole purpose, soul culture, growing closer to the source by perfecting character and expanding love.
And this growth is helped by specific methods.
Yes, by harmonizing ourselves with universal spiritual currents through those mental and physical disciplines. This harmony makes conscious, loving communication with spirits possible, enabling mutual help and growth across the veil.
And she sees this progressive spiritualism not as just another religion, but as a return to the root of all true religion.
Precisely. Based on testable facts, natural laws, not miracles, individual experience, reason, universal love, and eternal progression. She saw it replacing narrower, fear-based, dogma-bound systems that she felt had distorted the original truths.
And physical health ties into this too.
Absolutely. Simple, healthy habits, diet, fresh air, exercise, cleanliness, create physical harmony that supports the soul's journey and makes connection easier. It's all linked.
So ultimately, the message for you, our listener, coming from these sources is one of hope, empowerment, and, well, responsibility.
Definitely. You're not just physical, doomed to end. You're not separate from the infinite or the spirit world. You're an eternal soul right now, capable of huge growth and connection.
And the author offers practical methods for this. The work is personal, up to you, but the payoff claimed is certainty, peace, no fear of death, and contributing positively to everyone's advancement.
It paints a picture of a rational, purposeful, fundamentally good universe. It challenges deep fears about death and offers a path based on personal effort, love, and reason.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive. We've covered a lot, exploring these profound questions of life, death, purpose, our place in it all, and getting not just philosophy, but actual guidance.
It certainly leaves you with a lot to think about, maybe explore more. As you reflect on all this, how do these ideas resonate with you? What parts of this exploration of the sources you shared really stand out?
And maybe one final thought to chew on, a provocative idea right from the author's perspective to consider after we finish. If, as Abby Judson suggests, we are spirits now in these bodies, and where we are now is the lowest sphere of the spirit world of the earth. If that's true, what does that fundamentally change about how you view your current life, your relationships, your daily struggles, even the very ground beneath your feet?
That is a perspective shift to think about.
Thank you again for providing the sources that allowed us to take this deep dive today.